Hey guys, Alex here with Paragon Performance. Today we're going to be showing you how to add some Z07 styling to your C8 Stingray by installing this Paragon Performance Z07 wing. This is chassis mounted. It is offered in carbon fiber and carbon flash, and you can option for some paint match bumper plugs to plug the holes in your bumper if you had a previous spoiler installed. Let's get to this install. All right, so let's get started taking our bumper off. We're gonna open the deck lid here. And we're gonna start by removing these 16 T15 screws here across the top. There is one hidden one here on each side that we do need to take out as well. Let's get to taking some screws out. All right, moving to the underside of the bumper here, we need to remove these two T15s and these three 7mm screws here. We'll need to do this on both sides. All right, so let's get this splash guard removed here. There's a few clips here along the outside edge. Using a panel pry tool, just reach in and unclip them. And that gives us access to the two T15s here holding the fender liner to the bumper. And now, as you can see, we do have the wheel off on this car. It's not necessary to do that, but it does make it easier to get to some of this hardware. And it gives you a little more space because next we're headed up in behind the fender liner here to unbolt the bumper from the fender. But we're gonna take and move this fender liner out of the way. You can bend and prop this up however you need to. You can actually hold it out of the way while you reach in here and undo that hardware as well. And from the fender liner side here, we are going to remove these two 7mm screws and this 10mm nut. And then we'll need to repeat that process on the other side. All right, so we're ready to get this bumper pulled off here. This is a time to have a buddy come hang out, as you have one electrical connector on this side, two electrical connectors on that side that we need to undo. Having that buddy just makes that process easy. One of you can hold the bumper, the other one can undo the electrical connectors. And then you just need to find a place to set your bumper safely so we don't damage any paint. All right, we've got our bumper off here. If you did have a spoiler installed on this, we do obviously have to remove that to put the new spoiler on. Typically, those are gonna have 6 mounting screws that hold those on if it's a factory Z51, high wing, or the low profile spoiler. To get to some of that, we do need to remove the taillights, and we'll need to remove the high mount brake light. These are just gonna be some 7mm screws around the outside, same way with this. And you will have an electrical connector and a wire retention clip that we will need to pull out on each one of these items as well. Then you'll be able to access all the bolts to unbolt your factory spoiler. Then we can get to installing our new spoiler, but we got to get this stuff taken apart first. All right, so we've got all the lights removed here. Now you're gonna wanna remove the 6 10mm hardware that does hold your factory spoiler on. Go through that process of getting the spoiler off, double-sided tape cleaned up, sticky removed, so you are ready for the next steps of installing it. If you did not have a factory spoiler, you will have to drill 2 holes here in the center. We do provide a template for that. Just keep in mind you are only drilling the 2 center one. That template will have holes marked for the outside. For this Z07, you're only drilling these 2 center holes. It tells you on the template what size to drill the holes, weigh your template out, drill your holes, and next we're gonna work on getting our spoiler and our bracket installed once holes are drilled or your factory spoiler is taken off and everything's cleaned up. And let's get to that. All right, so we are gonna grab our 8mm hardware. These are the bigger screws in the hardware kit included with this, as well as the only 2 washers that fit them. Then we are gonna grab our bracket. You will need a 5mm Allen, and we're gonna get our bracket installed. You will want to reinstall the high mount brake light prior to putting the bracket on, so otherwise you won't be able to get it put back in. And you can go ahead and install the tail lights if you would like at this time as well. But we've got our high mount installed. You are going to take your bracket. Your bracket will actually fish in between the high mount brake light and the top of the bumper here. And it should go in kind of like so. You start one side in, you can kind of wiggle it down in there, just like so. Now we're going to take that hardware, we're going to install it through the hole here in the top of the bracket, through the hole of the bumper, leaving the screw sticking out of the top of the bumper here. Also for this step, you may need to drill these holes out a little bit bigger. Sometimes the OEM ones don't fit this larger hardware because it is larger than the hardware that was originally in a spoiler there. So you may need to step those up. Just step them up in small increments so it's just enough so the bolts make it through. Now we're gonna get our spoiler put on to these bolts. This is where it's helpful to have an extra hand just because you are trying to get a bolt started, trying to hold a kind of awkward shaped spoiler. And you also have double-sided tape you have to deal with. So we will need to peel this first and then essentially set it up here and start the screw. Do the same thing for the other side here. Having the extra hand here is sometimes helpful. In fact, a lot of times helpful, but you just get one side started and then start the other side here. And go ahead and tighten those down and snug them up pretty good. All right, got the bumper attached. We've got a couple riv nuts that we actually need to install here on this prior to getting this set back on the car. And now we're going to grab the 2 riv nuts that came with your hardware as well. These are going to install into your bracket just like so, where the flange side stays towards the top. Now they do make actual tools to install these riv nuts. It does make it a little bit easier. However, you can install them with just a bolt and a nut. These are a 6x1mm thread, but I have the actual tool, so we're just going to use that. Essentially what you're trying to do is get this to mushroom out in that hole. Just gives you a threaded hole so we can install a screw from the inside of the trunk. And just like that, this side's ready to go. Now we just need to prep the car side here. So let's get to that. All right, so we are going to grab our template here. We're gonna get these cut out. They're labeled right hand, left hand side. This is gonna give us where to drill the holes into the rear tub here for our spoiler bracket. So I'm gonna get these cut out, placed into place, and get a pilot hole drilled in each side. Now we're gonna go ahead and get this carpet pulled back away from the back wall of the tub here. To do that, we're gonna remove these 2 anchors here on this side, as well as the 2 anchors on the other side. Then we will need to pull these 2 push clips. This little plastic piece here at the top does have a couple fingers, so you will need to lift up on it while pulling out. Let's get to it. And don't forget about your emergency pull handle that's down here. That kind of gets in your way. make sure that gets put back in place. Now grabbing our left-hand template here, we're gonna get this placed around this little metal bracket here, and then basically it will follow the body line here and follow this seam here as well. And just use a piece of tape to kind of hold it in place for you. You're gonna need to do the same thing on the other side. And using a small drill bit here, we are going to make a pilot hole. All right, so we got the pilot hole drilled. I'm gonna remove the template here, and then using a 3/8 drill bit, we're gonna make these holes bigger. All right, so we've got those holes drilled in our car. Now we need to get the bumper put back on the car. Don't forget to plug in those 3 electrical connectors before you get the bumper set all the way back on there. Let's get this bumper put back on. All right, bumper's on, connectors are plugged back in. Before we go reinstalling the bumper here, we're going to want to grab our 6mm hardware and the extra large washers out of our hardware kit. We're gonna get the spoiler bracket bolted through the holes that we drilled in the tub here. Pretty straightforward. And do that on both sides, get those tightened down. Then you'll go through the process of getting all your hardware put back in your bumper so your bumper's reinstalled. And once that's tightened down, you can go ahead and put the carpet all back into place as well. And for the ones that had a spoiler previously installed, we've got an option to cover these. You will need to select that option at time of checkout. These are a paint matched body plug, so they'll blend in much better than the big open holes. The top hole, the plug fits in like it should. The bottom hole, however, due to some inconsistencies in size, you will need to add a layer of heat shrink. Just cut it, install it, heat shrink it down, being careful not to damage the painted surface. Test fit. If it doesn't fit very firmly, you can add a second layer, or in some rare cases, you may need to add a 3rd layer of that heat shrink. Heat shrink is provided with them, and you will get enough to do both sides. There you guys have it. Pretty simple install. Gives your Stingray that Z07 look without that Z07 price tag. As always, like, subscribe, and comment. We'll see you guys next time.